to Dr. Liz Bywater, who is a one-of-a-kind leadership expert who works at the intersection of business and psychology. She works with senior executives and teams across all sorts of different companies like Johnson & Johnson, Bristol Myers, AmerisourceBergen, Nike, and Thomson Reuters. Liz developed this rapidly actionable framework for success, and she's captured this framework, this idea, in her book, Slow Down to Speed Up. Liz, I'm fascinated by your whole idea of slow down to speed up. It's kind of interesting. Talk to us about that.
Happy to, Debs. So slow down to speed up. I developed the concept a few years ago in kind of a formal way in terms of creating the book and some content around it. But I've been working with my clients on this concept for a while. The idea is that we are all living in a world that is moving very rapidly. We see that today more than ever. Change is pretty much constant and continual. There's always way more to do than time in which to do it. There are so many priorities on the list that nothing's really a priority. It's just a huge to-do list. Demands keep coming at us continually, personally, professionally, from people that work for us, with us, people for whom we work. There's always so much going on. And often what happens is we are acting so quickly, making decisions so rapidly, throwing so much off our plate that mistakes get made, sometimes important mistakes that take a whole lot of time, effort, and energy to fix. Things aren't really getting done properly the first time. Sometimes we're spending time, effort, and energy in the wrong places, so we don't have time and energy for the things that are most important and most pressing and that will help us get most rapidly to achieving what we want to achieve. So slowing down to speed up is about taking a thoughtful, deliberate, measured, considered approach to the work that we do and the ways in which we live our lives. It's about taking some pauses in the action, being strategic, being thoughtful, not, dragging your feet, not, kicking your feet up and having some bonbons, which actually sounds sort of nice right about now, but taking just enough time that when you're ready to hit the ground running, to use a whole bunch of silly phrases, but you really can. You've got the resources lined up, you've got your plan in place, you've thought through what can go right and what can go wrong and how do you mitigate risk. And so you're much more likely to be able to make the right decisions and get the right things done.
Fantastic. So can we deconstruct a little bit here? So you say when people go too fast, when they rush into making decisions, that they might make mistakes and they might do the wrong things at the wrong time. Talk to us about that, because when there's a pull to get stuff out, to get things completed, to finish, to get output, but you're suggesting that people just take this pause to slow down before racing off again. How do you know? Talk to us about that. How do you know when to slow down and when to speed up?
Well, that's actually a very good question, Debs, because the truth is it's not as straightforward as slow down, then speed up. It really is figuring out when do you have to hit the brakes and when is there no time? When do you just have to hit the ground running? I think what happens is if you have slowed down consistently and strategically, you are almost at a moment's notice ready to go fast when you need to. So that's really part of the trick there. But what I tell my clients is make sure you're building blocks into your schedule. It can be a bit of time every morning. It can be at the end of the day. It might be at lunch. It might be an hour on a Friday afternoon. You get the idea. And over the course of a month or a quarter, maybe you're blocking out, 2, 3, 4 hours. And if you're an executive leading a team, maybe you're pulling your team together for a day or two, once every quarter, once every 6 months, because then you're planning for a larger period of time. You've got more people together that have to really line up around who does what, where are the accountabilities, how will you communicate what gets done and when. But if you've protected time, and you've refused to let others sort of grab hold of your calendar, and you've refused to let yourself run in too many directions at once, you're really almost always poised to go fast when you need to. I'll quickly use, something really obvious of what we're going through now as an example. So here in the United States, when the COVID-19 pandemic struck, one of the biggest challenges was, I think, many healthcare organizations, for instance, felt ill-prepared to handle the influx of infections and people who were very ill. We didn't have all the equipment that we needed. We didn't have, all of the plans in place. There wasn't adequate communication. Many would say this, it's somewhat divisive, but many would agree. In the places where there was better preparation, then patients came in and hospitals were better able and states were better able to manage the inflow. Where there was less planning, preparation, and alignment, it became more overwhelming more quickly and more difficulty ensued. So I don't know if that kind of helps you to understand the concept, but that's kind of what I'm talking about.
So I love the word you use, poised. So once you've done that slowing down work, you are then poised to go fast. So you're not falling forward, you are moving forwards with control and enthusiasm. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit, because this idea, slow down to speed up, it's such a fantastic phrase. Talk to me about how you captured that intellectual perspective, that intellectual property, how you captured it, and now how you use it to generate business.
Well, I honestly don't remember exactly what the moment was that I came up with the title of the book, but conceptually it just made sense to me because, so many people around me, including myself at times, were just, running around so quickly. I mean, literally at times running from space to space, trying to get from meeting to meeting and get things done fast. And I kept thinking to myself, I need to slow down. Clients need to slow down, not get stuck in place, but just take a breath, reframe, get the right mindset, make sure we're all lined up, etc. Once I started writing the book, actually, I think what happened was as I was writing the book, I was working with a potential publisher who had, I'll give them credit, had this idea of really sort of separating out aspects of the book. So the first section was, how does one slow down? Why is it important? What do we do? What are the risks of not slowing down? And then the second half of the book really being a set of tools and a whole lot of guidance around, okay, time to speed up, here's how you do it. And so you probably know I have all kinds of frameworks and tools, CIA, which is control, influence, accept, and adapt. Control the things in your universe that you can, but don't waste a lot of time, effort, and energy on the things over which you don't have control, and we can talk more about that. Tools for managing email overwhelm, sort of some productivity stuff, but also strategic things, thinking through what do you want to accomplish, how are you going to get there most rapidly, etc. So some of that came in dialogue with a potential publisher for the book, so I give them lots of credit for that. That was really helpful. And as you and I have talked about, I am way more effective when I'm in dialogue with other people. So when you and I have spoken, for instance, all of a sudden I feel engaged and creative and the thoughts start flowing. For me personally, when I'm just sitting in front of my laptop or a pad, it's a blank page phenomenon. I'm not as creative that way. So I think it's fantastic to work with others and think out loud and answer questions and ask questions and get other perspectives. Once we got all that in place and the book was published, then it was really about how do I take bits and pieces of what slow down to speed up entails and repurpose it in lots of ways that could be useful to many different clients at many different points in time. So created a set of tools. I think one is called the Strategic Leaders Toolkit, and it's a whole bunch of tools and frameworks from slow down to speed up. Some are just individual documents, like my Accelerating Success Action Plan. It's a really simple document, but it's highly applicable, and I can send it out to a client or post it on LinkedIn or put it on my website, write an article about it, create a case study, etc. All of these ways to get the information out there, to bring people's attention back to my profile on LinkedIn and my website, and help people get access quickly to the materials and maybe pick up the book. I've used it in keynote addresses, workshops with clients. I've created booklets that I can distribute when I'm running an executive team offsite and so on. So there are a million ways I've been able to repurpose and reutilize the material. You've helped me tremendously with that, so I thank you, because you are far better at creating the visuals and capturing the individual aspects than I personally am. That's not my forte. So again, I think for me, having somebody or people to work with, to collaborate with, to be able to hand off the aspects of the material that I'm not best suited for. I mean, that's part of slowing down to speed up too, by the way, is not trying to do everything yourself.
Yeah.
And call that not me. You know, so creating beautiful graphics and PDFs, that's a not me, that's a Debs, you know, for instance. So I don't know if I'm answering the question or if I've gone into too much detail.
No, that's brilliant. And I'd like to just pull on some of those little things as well. So for example, you talked about articles, case studies, keynotes, workshops, got a whole list, toolkits, tools. So the book is kind of became like the hub of all these extra assets that you created around the book that then kept drawing people back to you, back to the book, back to your website, back to your profile. So there wasn't I mean, because it's like lots of people ask me, it's like a chicken and egg type thing. What do I do first? Do I have a book? Do I have a toolkit? Do I have a methodology? Do I have so for you, what was there one thing that came first? Was there ever a moment that something came first, or did it evolve organically?
For me, it was more of an evolution. Now, that can really vary, I think, person to person. Some people are very systematic in the way they work, and that's super helpful. I'm a little bit more, you and I've talked about this, sometimes I just throw mud at the wall, and the key is not to just, let it stick there, but to, to be a little bit more thoughtful. That's sort of my Achilles heel, is I try to do a little bit of everything at once. I think you have to know your personal style and your strengths. If you're somebody that does well to create, a checklist of, this is the broad category of what I'm trying to accomplish. These are the different tentacles. These are the ways in which I can address it. And I want to do A and then B and then C. Then great. I think that's fantastic. I'm not one to say you need to rigidly adhere to anything, but if that helps provide a framework and a structure, I think that's great. I think for me, it was really the book first, but the book was built on the work I've already done and the thinking I've already had. But I, came together. I had a lot of conversations with some, fantastic clients that I've worked with over time. The book includes some quotes and some case examples and amalgam stories and so on from the work I've done with clients. And then at that point, because the book I wrote is very pragmatic and has a lot of tools in it, it actually became very easy to use it to create all of these ancillary materials. Yeah. And at some point, I may pull together all of the additional material I've created and all of the additional experiences I've had with clients and their successes, and maybe create a version 2 of the book that has more. The book, you've seen it. It's a small book. It's like not even 100 pages.
I've got it.
Yeah. I mean, I joke around. It's a little more than a medical pamphlet. It's not War and Peace, but that's on purpose, because if I tried to make it too big, one, it would take me forever to get out there, and I really just wanted to get important material out there quickly. And two, the concept of slow down and speed up, it really encourages you not to do more work than you need to do to get the job done. Super briefly, when I was pursuing my PhD, the tail end was writing the dissertation. And I could have written a dissertation that was this big, or I could have written a dissertation that was this big. Either way, when I walked out of my oral defense, they would call me doctor. I decided to go with this one.
Yeah.
So, and it served the purpose well. Sometimes you need to do all the work and you need to be super rigorous. And sometimes you need to do the right work and get the job done. Yeah. So, again, long answer to your question, but hopefully addresses some of what you're asking about.
No, it's a brilliant answer. One of the things I'm helping clients with at the moment is what I'm calling minimum valuable assets. So it's the minimum thing you can do that adds value to the client, to the person that wants to read it, and it's an asset to you, so it works while you're not working. So your toolkits are minimum valuable assets. Your book is a minimum valuable asset. It helps the reader get from A to B. It's there when you're not there, so it's an asset to you, and it's valuable. Small things. I think sometimes we get caught up in this this thought that we have to make something big or extravagant or complicated or convoluted, when really what you have to, I think, go back to what does the reader or the viewer or the user need, and once you know what they need, then you can create the minimum valuable asset for them. So I love what what you're saying about how the book is small but small but mighty, like us.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay, so one of the things you mentioned was knowing what things you're good at and knowing when to pull in someone to help you with the things that you're not so good at. So one of the things I find with lots of my clients, especially their solo businesses, they're solo consultants and trainers and mentors and keynote speakers, one of the things they find is it's really, really hard to delegate some of the work. So how do you decide which bits that only you can do and which bits should you look for some help?
It's a good question, and it's applicable, exactly as you say, to people in solo consultancies, and it's applicable to CEOs of large companies. I mean, it's across the board. It's an exercise that I actually recently did with a client of mine a few months back, where what we did was we took a whiteboard, he had a big whiteboard in his office, and I said, I'd like you to write down everything that you have on your sort of to-do list for the next 3 months, over the next quarter. What are the things that you need to get done? And he very quickly filled in the entire whiteboard and then kept going back, oh, I forgot this and I forgot that. Everything from, things that have to be done for the board to various customer meetings to things with employees, organizational work, etc. There's an enormous amount there. And I said, okay, now I want you to take a look at this and I want you to filter it through the lens of me, not me. And so, he circled all the things that he personally, as the CEO of the company, needed to do because it was within his immediate responsibility, and that was the expectations, for instance, getting in front of the board. That needed to be him. What are the things that he was exceptionally good at, and it would actually be better and faster for him to do than to delegate. And again, also appropriate. He wasn't working at a level or 2 or 3 elsewhere in the organization. He was working at his level. And what are the things that maybe he really loved to do, and so they were energizing and not a distraction from the other things that needed to get accomplished. So he circled all of those things, and for all of the other things, I said, okay, well, who gets all these other things? So it's me, not me, who, if we want to be super, literal about it. But then, so to whom do I delegate all of these other activities? So for people like you and me, maybe it's delegation, or maybe we're simply hiring out, right? I hire people to help me with my social media and with creating beautiful graphics. And, I could name a number of other things because either I'm just not good at it, I don't care to do it, it takes me too much time, it saps me of energy, and there are only so many hours in the day, and there's only so much energy any of us has for the work. So, I think it requires a little bit of self-reflection. I would take a piece of paper. I mean, I'm kind of old school. I would take a pad and paper. You can whiteboard it. You can take out your laptop, write it down, everything that you do or need to get done. Think about, what am I great at? What do I love to do? What absolutely would take me more time, effort, and energy to delegate than it would to simply get done myself. And be honest with yourself. Don't keep stuff because you're afraid to let go. Because that's another thing, right? It's very easy to say, I have to do everything because, it's too hard to let go of the reins.
Yeah.
But once you've done that, then you have to hand things off. Otherwise, you simply won't be able to accomplish the important things.
Yeah. I think as well, what I've done recently is I've hired myself an assistant because I'm in this category. I talk about my clients. I am in the same category where I just do everything for myself. I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. So I hired an assistant and I pay her even if I don't delegate work to her. Mm-hmm. And that for me is my way of making sure that I responsibly delegate, because otherwise I can do it faster than I can delegate it. I can just quickly rush around and do it. And that means I'm not doing the things that only I can do.
Yes.
The thinking or the coming up with stuff. So yeah, I use, that's my forfeit. So if I don't give her stuff to do, I have to pay her anyway. So it makes me delegate. It makes me pass the baton on rather than thinking I'm the only person in the world who can possibly do it.
Well, and I think you make a good point too, Debs, which is you have to be able to trust the person to whom you're delegating. So you have to have the right team around you. And again, this could be for people like you and me who are solos, or it can be for people working in large companies. There's nothing more important than hiring people who are competent and engaged and willing and able to learn quickly and with whom you can communicate well. It doesn't have to be someone who's done the exact job prior, although that can be useful. But if you've got the right person in place, it's so much easier to delegate. I mean, I've had assistants over the years where it really has taken me 2, 3, 4 times the amount of time to hand work off as it would have been to simply try and do it myself, because they weren't a good fit for a variety of reasons. It just wasn't a right fit. But when you get the right people in place, it is a million times easier. So that's also a little bit of slow down to speed up. If you take time to get the right team around you, tell them what you need, get clear on, by when and how you'll know that it's done properly and all of that, then you can go so much faster, because then you say, okay, you take this, you take this, you take this, thank you very much. And it'll come back done well.
Fantastic. And I loved your idea of just writing everything down on the board. I can imagine how cathartic that would feel to just get it all out of here, out of the chaos in your head, and cathartic and probably quite scary.
Yes. Well, it can be, because you are saying, I am going to be willing to circle some of these things as a not me.
Yeah.
And but here's the upside. I've seen this work where once that's done, and again, under the assumption that you have the right people in place for the handoff, it becomes a way to track progress, to assess, to reward the people around you for a job well done, and to determine, when do you not have the right team in place, and how quickly can you move on that? Because if you determine that you don't have the right setup, whether it's you're a solo person, you've hired somebody to help you, or you're, a CEO and you've got an executive team that's not performing, once you've slowed down to do that assessment, you do have to move pretty rapidly to have an exit plan for that person or those people, because that will drag you down. That will slow you down in ways that are not positive and are not helpful.
Yeah, understand. Okay, I'd like to completely change the subject a little bit, or not really, but let's think about some of the things. Okay, so one of the things you mentioned was constraints. Now, I'm very keen on constraints, not that side, but constraints in general. So boxing things, time constraints, resource constraints, making decisions. How do you constrain as a solo what you do in a day? For example, how do you decide today I am going to do blah? How do you decide?
Well, again, full confession, I am not the most systematic with this. I have gotten much better, in part because I myself have worked with advisors and mentors and coaches who have, given me just basically sort of straightforward tips, right? Blocking out periods of time, maybe, and deciding how early in the day you can get up. And I think for everybody that's different. If you're a solo, you have a little more flexibility. So if you're a person who doesn't sleep well, and if you try to get up at 6 a.m, you're shot for the whole day, then don't get up at 6 a.m. Get up when you feel refreshed enough that you can really go through your day and tackle it well, for instance. But I decide, for instance, this week is a pretty flexible week for me. I mean, life is a little different these days than it was 3 months ago. I'm not traveling out to clients and so forth. It gives me a little more flexibility. But I knew today was going to be a day where I would have a lot of video and phone calls. You and I have our call. I have a call, in an hour. I have a couple in the afternoon. And so I decided that this is mostly going to be a day for calls, maybe writing up a few things, maybe working on a newsletter. And I wanted to really keep myself focused on that. Tomorrow, I know I've got a whole bunch of administrative stuff that, frankly, I have been procrastinating on because I don't like the administrative stuff. It's not fun for me, but needs to get done. And some of that's personal sort of household stuff, and some of that's business stuff. But I'm blocking out, a good section of the day to just do that. So I think about what's most pressing, where there are deadlines. I think about, what's actually most important for today's priorities, and today's priorities may very well look different from priorities 3 months ago. We always need to be reassessing. That's part of slowing down. Am I still working on the right things? Am I still aiming for the right outcomes? What's changed? But, so you think about what's most pressing, what's most important, what are the things that you're going to do at a later time or not at all. So, I have this framework called now, later, never.
Yep.
What are the things that I have to get done today because I've promised it to a client, or because, the bill has to get paid by Tuesday, or I'll have a late charge, or whatever it might be, what are the things that have to get done now? If there are things that can and should get postponed, that goes in the later category, now, later, and then never means sometimes we have to take things off our list. So if I wanted to write the next great American novel, but I'm not really that great a creative writer, and I'm really just focused right now on my clients and my business and my children, and helping kind of get through this sort of hectic phase of the world that we're in right now, then I'm probably going to put that great American novel into the never category. Doesn't mean I can't go back and revisit it at some point, but we all have to, I think, diligently say, what's now? What am I pushing off? What am I taking off the list altogether? Because again, there's only so much time in the day. We only have so much energy. And there are only so many things that really bring us good results and some happiness and satisfaction and success.
Yeah, I love that. And your slow down to speed up actually impacted my business life quite significantly. About 6 months ago, I changed my working patterns. I have Fridays where I don't take calls. So I block them out entirely, don't take calls unless it's an urgent one, but like they slip in every now and then. And Fridays are my F day, so it's fix it if I've broken something, which I do frequently. Finish it, because I often have tail end things, or if I've not got any clients and I don't have anything to finish, which never really happens, then I can have the day off. It's the F day.
Yes.
I extended that more recently, this year in 2020, and now I take 1 week of every month off from clients. So the last week of every month to finish jobs, because one of my big problems is trailing things that follow me along, and I never get to tick them off, and they stay open in my brain, they stay open, and they torment me at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I take a week off now, and that was the slow down to speed up philosophy. And I just like, how can I implement this? How can I make it work for me? So I think what you said about, if you're a morning person, get up at 6 o'clock. If you're not, don't. I think everybody has to find their own slow down to speed up routine.
Yes, 100% agree with you, because this really is a philosophy. It's a mindset. It is a set of tools, but I think, I'm a psychologist by training. And I think one of the things that makes life very difficult is an excess of rigidity. So if we are handed, here's a formula, here's a set of tools, and you have to stick to it in this exact way. And this is why diets fail, right? People, on Weight Watchers, we're told you could fill in so many boxes, and if it's 7 o'clock and you're done with your boxes, okay, deal with it till the next day, right?
Yeah.
And all of the diets, you can't eat a single carb or you'll, explode. I mean, there's all of these stringent mandates that we're given. And some people really do quite well with the structure, but I think you're right for each of us to reflect on, how do we best work? What's our personal style? Again, you and I have worked so well together, and part of it is because, you're fantastic. And part of it is because I love the back and forth dialogue. I like the extemporaneous, let's just get into it, So yeah, know who you are, work with your strengths, work with your style. I had a mentor tell me once, if you try to go from your weakest point and pull yourself up to, middle, you're spending a ton of effort and energy just to be mediocre. But if you start where you're already strong and you want to get phenomenally good, it's just a little extra effort to bump, and then you're really, as good as you possibly can be. So start up here. Forget about these things that are dragging you down. That's the stuff that you put on your never list or you give to somebody else.
Love that. I love that. That's brilliant. Okay, I'm going to ask you some different questions now.
Okay.
The question that I'm really enjoying asking people is, when was the last time you did something for the first time?
Oh my gosh, when was the last time I did something for the first time? That's actually a very good and difficult question.
Yeah.
Let me think about this. First time. I will tell you something I did recently that wasn't the first time, but it had been a very long time. And I'd sort of forgotten how wonderful it felt to do. And it's not a business thing, it's a personal thing. But I was out for a walk with my kids at a local state park, and they brought me to a trail that we'd not taken before. They'd taken, I had not taken. And as we continued to walk, the very end of the park ended bordered on a horse farm. And I know you're a horse fan. And you know, I love horses. I'm not a horseback rider. I've ridden once or twice. I'm a bit of a fraidy cat, but I absolutely love horses. And we went up to the farm, and there was a horse reasonably close to the fence. And we walked up, and that horse looked at us and decided to come on over and say hello.
Oh.
And I must have spent 20 minutes just kind of like petting, you know, you can pet the kind of the side of their face there, and they just kind of love it, or pet the nose. And it had been so many years, I mean, maybe 20 years since I've had that experience. And it's such a small little thing. I felt great the rest of the day. I'm smiling just thinking about it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think to find things that bring us a spark and some joy and some newness, to discover something that we either haven't done for a long time, or to discover something brand new, is really, really important to productivity, creativity, innovation, happiness, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so what are you working on right now? So is there anything new coming up? Are there a new creation on its gestation period? What are you working on?
Well, what I'm most focused on right now is really helping leaders and helping people in general navigate this really difficult period that we're going through. So I've written probably 8, 9, 10 articles over the last month or two on leading through crisis. Yeah. And I think it's applicable, you know, the guidance that I'm giving is applicable really all the time, but especially important when you've got people who are uncertain, adapting to new circumstances. You know, people who used to show up at the office every day or travel to clients and so forth are all trying to work productively. Many of whom are trying to work productively from home with family around, sometimes small children, pets, other distractions, as well as the distraction of just the constant news flow of, you know, a lot of churn that's going on in our society right now. So I've been writing a lot about leading through crisis, and also helping people focus not only on being heads down, how do we get through today, but how do we focus on what's coming next? Because we will get through this difficult time. Some things are already getting better, and you can't stay stuck. You have to start. This is kind of part of that slowing down to speed up, but it's next phase. So maybe we're not thinking about what comes in 5 years, but what comes in 3 months and 6 months and a year from now? And how do we both anticipate where the challenges will be so we can get out ahead of them? And how do we really create something? Create something new, you know, carve a new path and help bring people along with us. So those are the things I'm really focusing on right now.
Fantastic. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you're dying to tell me?
Oh my gosh. There's nothing specific, but what I would say is this: I really think part of being effective, whether you are, you know, a solo practitioner creating intellectual property, new offerings, a book, or you are an executive in a mid to large company, or anywhere in between, I really think it's so essential that part of getting the right things done includes taking care of yourself. So having the right enriching, rewarding social connections, eating well, getting enough sleep, not being proud that you can get through night after night on 3 to 4 hours and, you know, still, you know, get out ahead of the game. There are very few people who can actually function at their best that way. You know, getting out, getting some fresh air, you know, things that seem fundamental and basic, but we often neglect when we get overwhelmed and busy. Very, very important. And right now, when life is especially challenging for so many people, it's incredibly important to do a little self-care.
Yeah, we love that. Okay, so you've mentioned lots of your tools as we've been talking. I've made some notes: Me Not Me, Who, CIA, Now Later Never. Can we get hold of these tools? How could we get hold of these?
There are several ways. So folks can go to my website, which is simply my name, lizbywater.com. And there's a lot of free tools there, articles and videos and PDFs and free chapter to the book and a way to get the book. The book's also available on Amazon, and you know, you can just look up Slow Down to Speed Up, Lead, Succeed, and Thrive in a 24/7 world. And then we'll find those materials. There are free materials on my LinkedIn profile, which is I believe it's just Liz Bywater, right, Debs? Is it just,
Yeah.
you would know, you help me set these things up. Or actually, if anyone would like a little bit more direct help, feel free to just send me an email, liz@lizbywater.com, and be happy to have a conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz, for your time. And it's been wonderful today to speak to you. Speak to you soon. Ciao.
Thanks, Debs. Take care. Be safe. Be well. Bye.
Bye.